Turn the recorder. Got it. And you just have to click where it says got it. And then we go forward here. I'm very happy today to welcome you to the 2021 edition of the Families Together event. And I want to thank you for joining us with the people from as far away as New Jersey, some of them the Northeast, but celebrating the people and the work of the Interfaith Family Shelter. We want to take a moment at this time for a land acknowledgement as we begin our program.
Yes, thank you, Jim. As we gather tonight, it's important that we take a moment just to reflect on the lands upon which we are doing this work. Each of us comes from a different place, and we want to acknowledge the ancestral homelands and the traditional territories that in many ways were taken from indigenous people who have been here since time immemorial. And we need to understand that we have to recognize this and continue to build our solidarity and our kinship with Native people. The work of the Interfaith Family Shelter is sited on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, in particular, the Tulela, the Snohomish, the Stillaguamish, and the Salksuatl tribes. Tonight also, we want to acknowledge that the wealth of this country was built on the free, enslaved labor of Black people, and on the history of a systemic inequality in the way Black people have been treated in this nation and other racial groups as well. While the movement for justice and liberation is always ongoing, the legacy that persists today as we continue to work toward racial justice, toward equity, and toward dismantling the barriers and inequities built into the systems on which we are a part is key to continue. This brief acknowledgement is an important practice for social justice and equity. It'll promote visibility, and it'll serve for each of us as a reminder. So please tonight and going forward, participate in ways that honor the land, the life, and the labor of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that very, very much. I'd like to introduce a new partner in our work helping homeless families. Pastor Meredith Haynes is the new senior pastor at our faith partner, at Marysville United Methodist Church. We share a program at that church called Miracle House, which is a house where we're able to add 2 families at a time. And over the last 19 months, we've been able to help 10 families move from being literally homeless to being into their own homes and leading good lives. Pastor Meredith, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to see all these great faces. And I just want to remind us that we're all connected in the same spirit. We are in different places, but we're connected through the Spirit. So let's have a moment where we recognize that connection. Holy One, we gather together in gratitude, in mourning, and in hope. We are grateful for this beautiful and fragile world you have given us for our home. And we are grateful for the love which holds us together and inspires us to reach toward each other. We are in mourning for our fellow humans who are without a place to be at home, a place where they belong and are safe and can grow. We are in mourning for the decisions and values that neglect those vulnerable among us. We are people of hope because we can change. We can make new decisions that honor your beloved ones, and we can work together to find houses and homes for our neighbors one by one. Be with us tonight and in the days to come as we work together in your many holy names. Let it be so.
Amen. I want to introduce something to you. It's a Zoom thing that you can do because we're all kind of muted at this point in time to recognize our care and how much we are appreciative of the work that someone has done with us. And the way you do that, if you really want to be, is not clapping your hands because you're muted, remember? But if you wave your hands like this, you can get a real good picture of. Thank you so much for what you've done. Wonderful job. And now we move on and thank you, Pastor Meredith, for this. It's wonderful. We move on to our keynote speaker here today. And so I would like to introduce to you today, Jennifer Bearskin, and she's an enrolled member of the Conalongan tribe in Unalaska, Aleut, and Snohomish. She's been an advocate in Snohomish County for the last 10 years. From a young age until her late 20s, she and her family began experiencing chronic poverty and homelessness. As a single mom of a child with special needs, she began participating in the Resident Action Project to advocate for housing justice. She started by serving as a Resident Action Project Steering Committee and the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance Board. This led her to other leadership roles in Washington State, including work with the governor's poverty reduction work group that has developed the 10-year plan to end chronic poverty, and which has gained national inquiries from several states and the Biden administration. Jennifer has graciously agreed to answer a few questions at the end of her presentation. So could you please just write your questions in the chat found at the bottom of your screen, and we'll sort through them and be able to ask one or two depending on our time. I give to you, Jennifer Bearskin. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. We Jennifer Sista, Stohopsted, Aduted, Beda Swaklam, Taguitsi. Hello, friends. My name is Jennifer. I am Aleut and Snohomish, and I am the youngest daughter of the Sea Monster Man. And I wanted to come on here today to give you a little bit of my story about how programs like these can really benefit our families and our children, especially our people going forward for generations to come. So I've experienced housing instability and homelessness for over 25 years. And my family's generation of poverty expands at least 100 years. And it's been my effort and my goal to change that cycle, to disrupt and to eliminate poverty and homelessness in my family so that my son, who is 9, doesn't ever have to be homeless again. I was actually 9 years old when I first became homeless, and that was actually due to gang violence. We used to live in West Seattle well before the area was gentrified. It was heavily gang and violence and poverty, but we had to move, and that started our journey of instability. And while my mother always worked and my stepfather did as best he could, we still struggled. My stepfather was somebody who served as a Navy SEAL in Desert Storm and suffered greatly from that. My mother, who was Alaskan Native, dark skin, dark hair, suffered a lot of trauma coming out from the racism that she experienced throughout her life. And so I didn't understand at the time why our society had such a hard time of viewing people who were poor or homeless as less than. But that has been the reality. And only in recent years, as people have begun to better understand the impacts of housing instability and homelessness, that they're starting to see that we are just human beings, just like you. Our children are human beings. And, you know, each person deserves to have a safe place to rest their head at night. So as I was saying, I started when I was about 9, and to be going through different forms of shelters and sleeping in the car, going into different hotels, motels. It impacted my education, it impacted my health, and it impacted my outlook that I felt like I was never going to be able to get out of this cycle of poverty. And as I've grown and began to better understand how policies and how our laws, state and federal, impact a lot of these fundings, you know, if not for people like you, you know, who are picking up the slack where we've been lacking in these policies to see as human beings and to provide with these nonprofits that provide transitional housing is immeasurable. Because I know when I was growing up, it was extremely hard for me to get support because there was just so much need. There was more need than there was support. And so I was able to get to about, I want to say to when I was about a sophomore in high school. My education had been delayed. So by the time I had gotten to be a freshman, I was already 16 years old. And my family was able to have an apartment for about 2 years, but due to some other issues going on within the management and the process, we ended up losing that voucher. And so that meant that before I turned 18, I had to drop out of high school because I needed to get a job. And I knew that while my mom had to take care of the other 3 siblings that I had, I knew as an adult that it was going to be easier for her to get into a shelter or to a program if it was just 1 adult and 3 minors. And so I left when I was 18 and I began working as a caregiver, but I was still homeless at the time. And my siblings entered into the foster care system. And in that system, it's very flawed when it comes to supporting Indigenous families. And we struggled with that for many years. But essentially, I was on my own. And so I had 3 places that I traveled between. So every couple of days, I would stay between a friend's house in Everett, a friend's house in Linwood, and then a friend's house down in Fremont in Seattle. And so every couple of days, I would rotate. And I did that for a year until I could get my own apartment when I turned 19. And at that time, I had re-entered into getting my education through Edmonds Community College, through the EdCap program. I completed 6 years of education in 3 years. I was working towards becoming, I wanted to become an RN at that time. And, but you know, Creator changed those paths a bit for me. So while I did, you know, have some stable ability within a house, there was always that constant fear of pay or vacate. Am I going to make enough for rent? And eventually being able to escape a domestic violence situation, which is what I had been maintaining. And so it wasn't until after I had my son and I was supporting my sister who had exited foster care that she decided she wanted to go on her own after a while of living with the big sis and figure out her life. It was just me and my son. My son had severe health issues, and so I couldn't work full time for him, even though I had at least 2 jobs. And it ended up being that another program like the YWCA helped our family. And it was having that support system within an organization with to help you transition into stable housing, what really made sure that me and my son could flourish. You know, my son has autism, and he couldn't even say mom or speak to me until he was about 5. And a lot of that had to do with he needed to have stable housing. He needed to have a stable schedule. And I needed to devote at least several hours a week for therapies for him, just to get him to a point where he was going to be functioning. And so I made the goal that he was never going to be homeless for a third time, and that 2 times was plenty for him. Right now, he's 9 years old. He is a little boy who just talks. He does not stop talking. He's actually excelling in math. He finishes all of his math stuff before all the other kids do. And he just loves music. And I really do believe his ability to flourish and to thrive would have not been possible if not for people who like yourselves are looking at us as human beings and supporting these types of programs and nonprofits that are helping to get families off the street and into a safe place. And so what I'd like to say is that in my culture here, the Snohomish on this side of Turtle Island, my sister had taught me about the word yahout. And to yahout is to push forward together, that can only be completed together. And so for us as a community, we have to yahout, because we are taught that nothing can be completed by oneself. It requires all tasks, large or small, requires help from another. And that is so that we will always have to depend and rely on somebody and to build that community. And in our community, the wealthiest people, or as we would say, the most high class people, are those who give the most away, who are there to support their community. And that is how we are. And in the Coast Salish communities, is we believe that you gain more by giving away more. And so I've been working now on my, as we've been stably housed now, I'm finally in a place where I have great management and owners who aren't, jacking up the rent and all of these things. So I'm actually at a point where I feel safe enough that I can actually unpack 20 years of boxes that I've kept, because it's always been that, oh, I have to move, or I've got to just throw everything in storage. And so I'm processing that trauma and that healing, and being able to, as you can see, put things up on my wall, make this house a home, because housing is a human right and every person deserves a safe place. And so I just want to say we're thriving. We're doing so well. I'm getting my bachelor's at Northwest Indian College in Native Studies Leadership. And I'm planning to enter into tribal law, because I want to be able to help my community. But in the meantime, I continue to volunteer and support others through policy reform, and understanding that people with lived experiences really do have the solutions to a lot of these issues. And that once our leaders and community members can see that we have such an invaluable piece to provide to the community, it's going to allow everybody to thrive. And when we think about how we impact, as we're taught in our Indigenous worldview and our Indigenous culture, is our impacts have to be something that'll impact 7 generations going forward. And so for me, what I can do in my lifetime that can impact not only my son, but all the generations going forward is so critical. And so I really do appreciate all of your time tonight, taking out of your day to be here, to provide any kind of support that you can for this organization, because every child deserves a safe place to sleep, and they deserve to have the ability to feel secure in themselves, and to have the ability to, be whatever they want to be when they grow up, and to not allow housing instability and poverty to hold them back. It's taken me a long time to realize that stuff is not going to no longer hold me back. And so going forward, I wanted to give some time to answer some questions. And I just want to say, Tukiti, I appreciate you for being here and listening to me today. And I will see you here. We have a few questions.
Jennifer, we do have a few questions. I think the first one is, if shelter programs could change one or two things to better support homeless within the Indigenous communities, what would those be?
Well, Washington State does have over 70% of our Indigenous communities are what they classify as urban Indians. So basically, people who, for various reasons or policies, have been removed from their ancestral homes. So my grandmother's place is in Unalaska. We were relocated to Washington, and so it's actually there's supposed to be some federal policies. Well, there is, but there's supposed to be some federal regulations or things that are supposed to support our Indigenous communities with housing. But a lot of the times they have these different kinds of rules because they've relocated us, that if you're not on your original territory, it's a lot harder to access housing. I also know that people on the reservations, there's like whole generations of people, they've not been able to expand housing within that. So I know like some of the reservations are so extremely small that there's just not enough room for people. But these shelter programs, it's hard because when I was trying to get into the shelter, this was about 10 years ago, I had went in there and they just said that there was just so much need. I'd went in there every week for about 6 months because I was anticipating when my lease was going to be up, and I knew that my son and I were going to be homeless. And it's I feel like there's really a lack of elected leaders who aren't seeing the impacts of being able to provide funding and supported services and programs for these types of things. As we know, like now in this pandemic, I'm somebody who is immune compromised. And if I was homeless during this pandemic, most definitely I may not have survived, because it is now, to be homeless, it could be a death sentence for people who have severe health issues. I actually was driving in Everett and I saw two elderly women sitting on the side, and they were using tarps as a blanket, because it had been raining. In our community, we would never allow any elder to be out in the cold like that. Our elders are everything. They are the bridge that holds our community together. And I just don't understand, in the richest country in the world, why we still have elders and children sleeping outside or being outside because we don't have enough shelters, or we don't have enough programs or funding to support our most vulnerable people of the community. And so that was really difficult to see. I know that there's been some strives for change, and that there's shelters are, doing what they can in terms of funding, but I understand that sometimes there's just not enough money, and the money is just not allocated in the way that it should be. And that really comes down to your local officials and their worldview and how they view or understand people without homes or people within poverty. And so I can only hope that as we continue to work within the groups that I'm in, that we keep pushing for better funding for all of our people here, not even just our Indigenous people, but all of our people here, because everybody, in my view, should have a home.
One more question I think we've got time for. And this one, Jennifer, is, are there policies that are proposed or hypothetical that you feel will bring our community closer to providing housing as a human right?
There are some policies, actually. There is a policy that that I believe King County had passed. It's you know, and it comes under a term that nobody likes, which is tax. And you know, the a lot of the times when we're going through legislative sessions, there's budget cuts, and the budget cuts usually go for a lot of these different programs that they feel are expendable or that they can remove. So I know in the last couple of years, we've been fighting extremely hard to expand the housing trust fund and these other big, you know, recording fees, these types of programs that are going to bring in funding to support these different programs to help our people, you know, all across Washington State, not just within our Indigenous communities, but essentially, you know, Snohomish County has not passed 1590, which would be a very, very tiny fraction of a tax that could provide annual funding up to $16 million for the first year to put towards housing stability. Because I think what people forget is that nobody is immune from becoming homeless. At this point in time, with what we have going on in the world, with the way our sickness and our hospitals and things overrun, you know, these are the realities. And if we don't have a plan and understand that we need to prioritize, you know, people over profit, we need to prioritize that our children can become stable and become productive members of the community. You know, there was a statistic that I learned while doing the governor's committee that said for every $1 that you can invest in preventing childhood poverty will give you a $7 return. And that's massive, you know, when you think about that. And so I know there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm noticing that people within the legislature, they're starting to recognize that, recognize what's happening within our communities, but they still have a ways to go. And that's why we still continue to advocate. That's why I still continue to advocate in wherever areas that I can, so that they can better understand the problems, and we can provide those solutions. But it also requires that you as a community advocate for that. My voice alone is not enough. You as individuals within your community can advocate and make sure that your leaders and your policymakers who are allocating those funds for your county can make sure that they are going to be putting those funds back into the people, because we all have the ability to provide something and give something back. But when you're just used to just surviving every day, and you don't have a safe place to sleep or a way to stay warm during this extreme heat or these extreme winters, you know, your life expectancy is very short. And it's to me, I think we as a community need to yahout. We need to push forward together. We can only do it together. And so I hope I've been able to answer some of your questions, and I appreciate your time tonight. But if there isn't any other questions, I will pass it along. Desoit, that is all.
Jennifer, we would love to have you and be able to have you answer more and more questions today, but we want to thank you. And the way we've learned to go about doing that is to thank you so much for all that you're doing. I think one of the things that folks need to know on this is that when Jennifer's done, we'll probably be looking at her on the ballot, like the one that just came out this week in our boxes. And we'll have a chance to try and see how she can affect what happens with our future. And so, Jennifer, we look forward to that. And thank you so much for the work you're doing, you know, for housing and for our community. and yours too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we're in the process right now of looking at homelessness from another perspective too. We, for 25, 30 years, focused just on providing shelter. And I'm happy to say that this year we had the opportunity to take a step in a different direction here. One that's not still dealing with families and still dealing with homelessness, but in this particular case, it's about prevention and about prevention of homelessness. And so I'm going to step aside here and let that be the guide for what we're doing here today. And so I catch you on the other side. If I can find the way to start it. Oh, too far. There we go.
My name is Frank Pasiccio, and I'm the board president for the Interfaith Family Shelter, and I've been with the shelter for over 10 years. At a board retreat a few years ago, there was a lot of discussion about homelessness issues, of course, and the board decided to say no to homelessness. Now, what that means is we had so many people knocking on our door that we decided to find a way of preventing homelessness, if that's possible. For example, the mom and dad, the dad, I remember distinctly carrying his 2-week-old baby in his arms, and the wife holding hands with her 3-year-old daughter, and they're dragging a garbage bag, a black garbage bag with their stuff in it, toys and clothes. We wanted to be able to prevent that. We also want to be able to prevent people living under the trestle on Highway 2. There's got to be a better way.
Hi, I'm Jim Dean. I'm the Executive Director of the Interfaith Family Shelter. Been with it for just over 4.5 years now. In order to get into any of Interfaith's other programs, you have to be literally homeless, which means that you have to be living in a place not meant for human habitation. Our prevention program is just the opposite of that. It's requiring that you not be kicked out yet. And really, our hope is in our work that we're doing in prevention to move as far into someone's insecurity or housing insecurity to allow us to be able to fix it with the least amount of funding and the least amount of time. So our whole program is designed to help people not become homeless.
My name is Marissa Chavez. I am the Homeless Prevention Specialist with Interfaith Family Shelter. Roughly, it can take about anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks, depending on how fast the process will handle and how quickly we can get it done for you.
In the process of becoming homeless, people don't recognize how difficult and how expensive that actually is.
We now realize that poverty is tri-generational, that poverty is the grandmother who is living with her daughter who just lost her job and who just lost her husband, and their 3-year-old son, Jimmy, is also with them. Poverty is the fact that 40 people called our hotline this particular month. Poverty is our neighbors that aren't able to make it. But to a lot of people are left in their poverty. There's nothing to pass on except for poverty.
We have people who are already on the streets. Then we have these people who are in their house insecure, but they're not secure. They live paycheck to paycheck, month by month, and they kind of are always in a crisis situation. So being able to help them get out of that crisis situation and be able to be self-sufficient and move on forward is the main goal.
That adds up to being about $29,000 we've invested in a particular family to be housed and stable a year after they're out. In our prevention program, a one-time intervention of between $1,200 and $1,400 keeps them in their current home and keeps them stable. So obviously the difference economically makes all the difference in the world. But the part that I really want to make sure people understand and really understand is not just the economics of it. It's the human damage. A child who walks home from school, finds all of her belongings out on the street, on the parking strip, because the family's been evicted from their home. That damage is immeasurable. But what's clear is that that damage carries over into all of their life. One of our number one indicators of someone being homeless is the fact that they were homeless as a child. If we ever want to stop that cycle, we need to prevent that from happening.
They're trying to keep their house. They're trying to keep their kids housed and keep their kids safe. And the purpose of that is every single client that I've worked with so far, I know that we've been able to keep them one more month in their home, especially during a pandemic. During an aftermath of a pandemic, it allows people to feel that sense of, okay, I'm secure for one more month.
This is an important work that we're doing here, and it's taking a small amount of money to make a big difference. Is in this last month, since the end of the eviction moratorium, since the time that people are starting to see huge increases in their rent, our numbers went from 3 and 4 and 5 families a month we're working with up to 36 in the last month.
The challenge is people wait till the last minute, unfortunately, when it comes to them being in a financial situation. If people can come to us before that, we can stop that process before people are evicted and out on the streets. That's the purpose of the prevention program, is to help people in the community not reach that point in time. I've also seen the struggle from single moms who are one income family. They're doing their best trying to stay afloat, but when you make a certain amount of money, you have 2+ children to take care of, it's hard to pay all those bills on a monthly basis.
Well, the prevention program's goal is to put the shelter out of business and to put the Cars to Housing program out of business. So we want people to be successful citizens, and that's what we hope to accomplish.
I see prevention being the replacement for the interfaith family shelter. People will always get into economic trouble. People will always have situations in their life that change, and so they have to adjust to it. So there will always be people, there will always be poor among us. However, how we respond is what's the difference. My hope is, in the end, actually, that interfaith family shelter doesn't exist anymore because we've taken care of them before they lost their home.
The rewarding part is knowing that another family will be housed for another month and potentially will learn how to budget better and stay in their house for further time.
I think the prevention program adds to all the work that we're doing for homeless families. Prevention won't always work. We will always probably have families that end up in crisis and need a place to stay to get them stabilized, put together, and into stable housing. We'll always need that. I can't see it completely going away. However, prevention can keep us from having both the damage to a child's psyche and a child's soul that comes from this, and it can also help us economically as a community too. And both of those together make it so that we help more people with less trauma succeed more.
Thank you so much to Mary Grace Anthony and Scott Hopper, who put together that video for us. Thank you so much. That brings us to where we go to next, which is in that same view, thanking lots of other people for the work that they have done with us and are with us. If you start and look at my background, there's some people I really want to thank, but I'm going to go to share my screen one more time because we have so many that we need to take a look at. And if I remember how to do this right, we got it. The first group that I want to thank is some partner faith groups that have been working with us for the last several years. But before I do that, there are a number of groups that have sponsored this event today, as well as been sponsors and helped with both our prevention program and our shelter program. And starting at the bottom, I want to thank the Everett Trust Foundation for being one of the lead donors who allowed us to hire a person to lead our homeless prevention program, and for their tremendous support they've given us to do that. I'd like to also thank the Albertsons companies. That includes the Safeway and Albertsons Foundation that gave us a large donation to help us make sure we can feed kids all throughout the year. Coastal Community Bank is sponsoring our event today, and I'd like to thank Corbin Rescue for his work that he does with that. And First Financial Northwest Bank, another sponsor with us today. Thank you and Yusuf Hansia for the work that you did to make sure that we have the funds to pay for running this program so that, in fact, your donations today pretty much are taken care of you've taken care of all the costs. So everything goes to the programs. Finally, I want to thank the Whitehorse Foundation, which is through the Seattle Foundation, for seeing the vision that we have and offering us even more support down the line to help make sure that we can continue the prevention program that you see today. Two of the groups that I also want to really highlight today, Cascade View Presbyterian Church. Cascade View Presbyterian Church was our first home for Cars to Housing. They were the ones stepped out, and I want to thank Luke Hyder in particular for taking the risk with us to set that site up and work with it to make sure there's a place for people to go safely park when we can't get them in the shelters because they're too full. Marysville United Methodist Church came right along after that and offered us an opportunity to use a house that they have on their church grounds as a spot where we can place 2 more families. In Snohomish County, there are 52 or 55 units that are for families who are experiencing homelessness. These 2 added to that to make it so that we have 57. Thank you, Marysville United Methodist Church, for your work together with us. Their work and our support together makes it so that we've put together 10 families through that house that would never have been able to get into our current interfaith family shelter. So thank you so much for that. We do have another faith partner that's joining us today, or joining us now, if I can get it to go. There we go. And that new faith partner who's joined us this year is Hope Covenant Church. Hope Church is right near 41st in Everett, and they have also provided us with a site for our second Cars to Housing program. This is a joint effort of Everett Faith in Action, the City of Everett, and their Streets Initiative, and these faith partners, along with Interfaith, to provide yet more spaces for people. And between Hope Covenant and Cascade View Presbyterian, we're able to help up to 10 families have a safe place to be while they wait for a shelter spot or a home of their own. I would be very remiss at this point in time if I didn't thank the Interfaith Board and the leadership of Frank Basiccio, our president, and someone's gotten in here and is marking on my screen, and Mark Sadler and Jesse Deason and Chuck Atkinson and Nushin and Greg Long and Don Whitfield and Naomi Katz-Barger. Thank you so much. And Deanna Bashur and Betty Perry Fisher, all of them helped me to run this program, and all of them are very responsible for you being here today. And I'm not sure who's helped us along with this one here. Our event committee, They're wonderful people. I would love to be having them stand up and have you give them a round of applause. Gene Crisp and Tom Crisp have been very integral part of this. Betty Fisher and Libby Atkinson, they're the wisdom that helps us make sure we do this right. David Jones and Sarah Olson and Heather Kissinger all have been part to help make this happen tonight. And I want to thank them specifically for their work. And some special thanks, the final one, special thanks, Mary Grace Anthony. She came out of retirement, not really out, but came back in to help me this year as development director. And she's been a big part of all that you see here in front of us today. Marissa Chavez, who did the work here to make sure that we can take care of families. We're excited about the fact that Marissa did all the work to make our program move forward. Heather has moved into our program right now as our office administrator, and she's the one that makes sure that things work here in our office, along with Daniel Blizzard, who takes care of the Cars to Housing and the Miracle House programs. Thank you all so much. But a final thank you I want to make is to someone who is not even with us anymore, but she spent the last month and a half making sure the transition from our office administrator, Sarah Olson, to our Heather Kissinger here happened flawlessly. Sarah, you did 2 jobs. You did 2 jobs while you were here. And I just want to make a special thanks today to Sarah Olson for the work that she did to make sure that Interfaith works well. Finally, our shelter staff, and many of you got a chance to meet some of them in your breakout room. I want to thank the staff for all the work that you also did for this today. We don't have anybody here today from the local AFSCME, it's the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, but they're still in our mind here because they did this wonderful job to make sure that our kids have an outstanding play structure, and they're always on call to come in and help with big programs and big possibilities here. So I want to thank them very much for what they've done also. There's also a person who, I don't think she's out there right now, but Michelle Hansen has been representing the LDS community for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. Michelle's husband retired, she retired with him, and she's left our board. Michelle was never officially on the board, she wouldn't join, but she came every month and made sure that our connection with the LDS community, in fact, is a support to what we have happening here. And so I need to recognize Michelle. I wish she could be here and we could see her on screen. We can't do that today, but thank you, Michelle, for what you did for our community. But there is also one more group. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I hope you knew that there was in fact a pandemic going on. And when pandemics are going on and you have the opportunity to have training to find out how to best deal with that pandemic, you need medical advice. When you also have a vaccination process come out and you want to work with a group of people who are flexible and wonderful, another group comes out. And I'm going to stop sharing at this point in time. And hopefully, if we can go to Alexis's room, we have 2 wonderful women here. Now, if you see them on this picture with me here, they're our friends here from Mercy Watch. They didn't know this was happening. Actually, right now today, Mercy Watch is out in the back, right behind where they're standing, here at the shelter to meet with our clients and provide for them medical assistance in any way possible. One of the great ways that they have given us medical assistance here is that they have, in fact, worked tirelessly to make sure that all of our staff and all of our residents are vaccinated. Anybody we could get to vaccinate, they got vaccinated in some way or another. I need to tell you that, you know, one of these folks, you know, Sheila, went so far as one night, you know, they were doing the second vaccination stuff and they couldn't find a couple who had gotten their first vaccination, and they had this open vial of vaccine that was going to go bad. And so what they did is actually went off to the train station and met the folks as they came off the bus and gave them vaccinations right there at the Everett Transit Station to make sure that they didn't miss, you know, that opportunity. With Dr. Mary Lou Hatcher is also right there with with Sheila here. And Mary Lou has been with us and been helping us. She is a retired pediatrician or family doctor, and she has done wonderful things to help us with that. And so, you know, I can't tell you how many folks are healthier now and are better off because of the work that they do. And they're here tonight just as a testament to say the wonderful things in the work they do. I'm going to take it away, Alexis.
All right, and I got my flu shot, so just now, literally just now.
Yep.
So we want to just thank you. We've got so certificates of thanks, outstanding service for both of you. Let me not give you the wrong one.
Yeah, right.
But yeah,
Great.
and then some flowers. So thank you. It means a lot.
This means a lot to us. This is cool.
We thank you both so much for everything that you do for us. We've got to run on to the rest of the program, but we want to thank you so much for everything. And let's give these two a wonderful.
For everybody else too. Well, we
Great.
can't do what we do without all of you. And Alexis is on speed dial all the time. Dan, I've been associated with, you know, Interfaith Family at the very beginning of the pandemic. So we couldn't do what we do without you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Nice. Oh my gosh.
We try to make sure at every one of these events, we do have a message from one of our former clients about what it's like to be at the Interfaith Family Shelter. And we had a great, unique opportunity this time around. Miss Caitlin Babcock came to the shelter at the bright age of 9 years old. And she's been able to do things differently since then. So I want you to hear from Caitlin in a short video clip that we have from Caitlin.
My name is Caitlin. I have 3 kids. I'm almost 30. And I work as a case manager / SUDP at Smoky Point Behavioral Hospital. I'm the youngest, and then I have an older sister, Courtney, and an older brother, Colby. I was between the ages of 7 and 9. I don't exactly remember. So growing up, my mom struggled with addiction my whole life. She was in and out of jail. We actually lived in Motel Express, which is on Broadway. And then I think after that, we had lived with my uncle, her brother, and it, I think, just got too much. So my family got kicked out of there. And then I think my dad found Interfaith through Red Cross or Volunteers of America. And so our whole family moved there, even with our cat who lived in the car. I think, you know, there was ups and downs. I definitely made friends. I have very vivid memories of helping cook in the kitchen and playing in the classroom, which since visiting is a lot smaller than I remember. I remember where our room was. I remember what it looks like. There was a bunk bed and then a bed in the corner, and there was a sink, and my sister used to squat over the whole sink to pick at her face and do makeup. So I have these very vivid memories. I remember the playground outside, not the play structure because I don't think that was there, but there was a circle outside that had toys and stuff, and yeah, I made a lot of friends there. I remember going to the beach, doing group activities. I actually found a journal the other day. I was going through my keepsakes that I kept while I was at the shelter, and of course it's filled with scribbles and words that don't really make any sense. But there was a sentence in it that said, "My family's living at the shelter now," and then it was the names of friends that I had made there that I don't recognize any of the names, but We would put on concerts in the classroom. I sang the My Heart Will Go On, the Titanic song. My dad met someone that rented out a bunch of places kind of around the downtown Everett area, and so he found a duplex on Grand Avenue that we moved into. So from the 4th grade to the 8th grade, we lived there, and then we actually were able to move into the house right next to that duplex, and that is where my parents lived up until, I was in college, and then my mom unfortunately passed away. So we had, a stable home that whole time though. So I work at Smoky Point Behavioral Hospital as a case manager, and I do chemical dependency. And I do a lot of groups, so for the dual diagnosis unit and then the adolescents, just a lot of like boundary groups, stuff on like self-care and self-love. I do assessments and then try to get them into treatment, housing. I love it. I think that had I not had the experience I did as a child and kind of that unstable home situation, I wouldn't be doing what I do now. I think that I was able to come out of it and be stronger and have a lot of resilience. So I think it's very much like a better me than someone who wouldn't have been able to handle it. Something that I would tell myself as a younger child is, you'll understand eventually. And so with that, again, I kind of went through what I did so that I could be stronger. So thank you, Interfaith.
We want to thank Caitlin for this. And we're just about out of time, but we do want to meet somebody very special to us here. We had the opportunity to video Caitlin, but we also have the opportunity for Caitlin to be here with us today. And so Caitlin's going to be the person doing our ask to send us off today back into our groups. What's going to happen here is that as we finish that part of it here, you'll be asked to give a donation, obviously, in this process, but also will then be able to move back into your small groups to talk with the people and say thanks and goodbye to them as we end tonight's program. You can leave at any time that you want to after that, but in fact, please, take a chance to meet there. But first, I want you to meet Caitlin. So I give to you Miss Caitlin Babcock. Take it away, Caitlin.
Thank you, Jim. I'm here to do exactly what Jim has said, is to do our ask for donations. I really like what Jennifer, the speaker, talked about, is being like in community. I very fully believe that we aren't meant to do this life alone, and we were created for community. And I think that had people not donated to Interfaith and to other organizations that can provide shelter for homelessness, my family wouldn't have been able to make it. I don't think I would be where I am today. And not just me, my siblings both have stable jobs, stable housing. My brother is actually a police officer for the city of Everett. And again, I just don't think these opportunities would have happened had we continued to live and struggle with homelessness. I think, again, that we're created for community. I think people matter more than things. And I think one way that we can support people is by donating. So if you could please donate, you could help a family like my family. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin, so much. And how can you donate? Well, many of you received a Don't Open Till envelope. Looks something like this. You can open it now if you want to. Those of you that have followed the rules here, you can open it. If you didn't receive one, if you didn't get signed up, or your mail is delayed because of changes in our mail service, inside that, what you'll find are a couple of things. One thing you'll find in there is a thank you card. And this thank you card filled out by the kids at the shelter for you, just for coming to the event. That's all it's for, is just thanks for being here tonight. Also in there, you'll find a stamped self-addressed envelope, but more importantly, you'll also find another card. And in that card, is a chance for you to write down a statement to the folks of encouragement to the folks at the shelter. You can then stick that, it fits right inside this envelope, and you can send that back. Now, of course, you could also open up the envelope and put in a check, and that wouldn't be bad at all. You also have an opportunity here to fill this out and have us put in, if you don't trust the online stuff, this is a way that you can have us do that for you and send this back to us. It's got a stamp, I noticed on the front here. The third way that you could go ahead and give is just go to our website. Our website's in the chat, and it's www.interfaithwa.org. Make a donation. It just popped up right in front of me here. Just click on that and you, in fact, would be able to go to our donation site and then give a donation online for that today. I want to thank you. We are 2 minutes over and I apologize for that. But I want to thank you for coming out tonight, for being with us and for this wonderful time. And we'll send you guys all off back to your groups to say hello and say thank you and good night.